With new technologies comes new ways that bad actors can get a hold of your software. It doesn't get more cutting edge than military space technology, so that means the security practices in place need to be top-notch and updated just as frequently. To find out how the U.S. Space Force is going about that, we welcome to the program Lieutenant Colonel Layla Barasha. She's material leader for the Evolved Strategic SATCOM ground segment with the U.S. Space Force. Lieutenant Colonel Barasha, thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you.
So why don't we just start with what your secure software development efforts look like. Give us an overview of some of the applications that you all are using to secure or need to secure, where those are hosted, whether it's in the cloud or if it's handled by an outside party.
Before I talk about the Evolved Strategic SATCOM software applications, I would like to start off with an overview of what Evolved Strategic SATCOM is. So Evolved Strategic SATCOM is the follow-on satellite constellation and satellite capability for the next-gen nuclear command control and communications architecture for the United States. So it's the follow-on to AHF. In that umbrella, there are 5 different segments within ESS that are software application-based. So the first one is the space vehicle software, and this basically controls all the functions on board the satellite and the payload and the functionality to provide communications to U.S. forces, joint and international partners. The second is a mission application suite, and this is the software that resides on the ground segment that will allocate those space resources to ground users and ground terminals. The third is an in-band command and control capability, which is another subset of software that does 24/7 control of the communications on board the payload and the bus. There is a fourth software application that is an out-of-band command and control, and this is control of the overall satellite constellation. And then the fifth portion that I believe we'll be talking about at length today is that framework and integration component. And within that framework and integration component, that is where all the APIs reside, the cybersecurity aspects, the digital twins, the system architecture. So that framework is the baseboard where all the other applications will reside for the ground segment for ESS.
So it's really is that fifth sector that is, as you mentioned, what we're highlighting today. What makes that up? Does it find itself larger than the other as far as manpower and needed software goes?
I wouldn't say that it's larger, but it is the component that will control the APIs and how the other software interfaces with the overall constellation and assortment of applications. So it's the first in the chute. We do have a software integrator and framework provider on contract, and they are on the hook to ensure that those APIs that are given to the other mission software developers interface accurately. They police the standards, but they also control all of the system requirements to make sure the data flows are cyber secure from the start. You know, they have a zero trust architecture, and we're requiring digital twins and digital engineering aspects to ensure that we can war game and do cybersecurity threat analysis through this digital twin that resides with the framework and integration vendor.
So is that the main reliance that you all are going for when ensuring security and in developing new software and updating your current one? It's all about just the zero trust and keeping tabs on that contractor that you have in place?
So you asked about reuse of software, and so I believe there was a 5-year effort to really understand the legacy software, its cyber vulnerabilities. Could we reuse any of the software? Was it compatible with this modular open system architecture that is, the best practice to ensure cybersecurity in a system? And so we realized very quickly through this analysis that the legacy software probably was not reusable. And so we started from scratch with those blueprints in mind. So the framework and integration component, it's not reusing any software. It's going to ride on a very thin framework that does just the bare minimum to allow the software developers freedom of movement to create their own subsets of modular system components in their software, but also with cybersecurity in mind built in from the start. And so we're not reusing the legacy software. However, we do have it all. It's all government owned. And so we have the blueprints. We're just not reusing that software because cybersecurity is such an important piece of our architecture. Again, this is nuclear command control and communications. So on a bad day, when President picks up the phone, President needs a dial tone. So this system will be alive during really bad days. So obviously cybersecurity and being a threat-informed, risk-based software architecture, we have cybersecurity built in from the start.
We're speaking with Lieutenant Colonel Layla Barasha. She is material leader at the Evolved Strategic SATCOM ground segment with the U.S. Space Force. And so is that sort of the modus operandi when it comes to new hardware and new pieces of equipment that you all are working with, or even just a new part of those other 4 sectors that you mentioned? Are you all going to redevelop or develop code from scratch every time, or is this stuff applicable to newer and more updated software and hardware? In
terms of the framework and integration piece of the puzzle, that is all new software, but that's so we can build in cybersecurity from the start. But when you start talking about hardware, because we are the follow-on to AHF, we are compatible with the existing user terminals, because user terminals are typically, the long lead items in any system. And what we're saying is we will be compatible with those legacy strategic terminals that AHF currently services. And so from that respect, we're not redoing the software within those hardware components. The user terminals are the user terminals, obviously with updates for crypto because it's a next-gen system, so crypto is going to have to be upgraded, and a few other limitations within their software. So obvious upgrades to them. We're not coding those from scratch. I guess what comprises of a backbone framework and architecture, that is what we were coding from scratch. That's the framework and integration piece. So overall, with the 5 different lines of effort, there is some hardware. There is obviously some components of legacy systems that we still have to work with, like Legacy Space Force, SCN, for the C2 scheduling. Is really what it boils down to. So the components that we absolutely needed to redo from scratch because of cybersecurity concerns, we did. And those aspects that are functioning as needed will be upgraded as needed. That was also part of the calculation. You've been using the same term. We created those with cybersecurity in mind from the start. I wonder if you could just explain a little bit about that, because that sounds like coding. And, how do you ensure that a safe code has been compiled, in a fast-moving production environment, and that it'll interact with the new systems and those legacy systems that you had mentioned? If you look at cybersecurity requirements across the board in the DoD, everybody references typically the RMF compliance. So is a system RMF compliant, risk management framework? And so there's this whole laundry list of items that vendors have to adhere to in order to be cyber secure. Last week, there was the CMMC 2.0 that was released, also standards for cybersecurity within DoD systems. Now, if we set that aside as, okay, this is the regulation for cybersecurity, you can be RMF compliant and not be cyber secure. So what are the aspects of cybersecurity that really ensure that ESS as a whole is cyber secure? And so we have the zero trust architecture built in, and we told the vendors from the start, cybersecurity is our number one key piece in this software development architecture. And so part of their incentive structures on their contracts are to go through cyber intrusion from DAF red teams. And so DAF red teams will look at that compiled code, will look at, the system architecture, the digital twins, and they will tell us whether this is cyber secure software before it ever gets to operational deployment. So from development from the start, we have these cyber components from third-party FFRDCs, universities, and the DAF red teams that are providing that system-level analysis of, is this a cyber secure architecture, again, before it ever reaches operations.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, I'm talking to a member of the Space Force here, and this is not the usual SecDevOps conversations that we're used to having with other federal agencies. What aspect of, that these systems are being deployed in space does that